Now, Jeff, could I ask you, suppose that the United States told Ukraine, we're out of here. It's your business. That is, our military weapons cease, and tell them it's up to you to decide whether you want to fight. You think that would bring Zelensky to the table? That we're the only one that, by our co-belligerency in providing this massive aid, is keeping the war alive?
Look, all wars have to be fed from the outside. And so Ukraine cannot fight this war for 2 days longer if we say that. That whether Zelensky says it or whether there's a coup or whether who knows? I don't want us to be part of that. But if we said it, the war's over. Same with Israel, by the way. If we said it, the war's over. They can't fight this on their own. This is very clear. It's just mechanical. So, of course, we should have told them back in March, thank God you're signing an agreement. We told them the opposite. And oh my God, as bad as we are, the British are worse. They're insane. They really think this is the Second Crimean War. They all think they're Palmerston. It's unbelievable. So David Cameron comes back as the foreign secretary. What's the first thing he does? The first day is fly to Kiev. Yesterday, it's unbelievable to say we have your back. They can't even defend London, much less Kiev. They have nothing, but they love the glory of the Crimean War. And that's the first thing they do with all the problems they have. With an economy in crisis, they can't keep the National Health Service going. They can't do anything right now. But the first day he goes to Ukraine. So this is how far we are from reality.
Yeah. Now, you remember during the Vietnam War, we had this idea, the domino theory, if somehow Vietnam went communist, the whole world would go communist and democracy would be over. I was saying that during the Vietnam War, we had this domino theory. I guess it started in the 50s with Dien Bien Phu, that if Vietnam ever went communist, the whole world would go communist, all the credibility of the United States would be crushed, and it would be the end of the free world. Now, it's been said in Ukraine, the same, that if we aren't there to defend Ukraine and Putin gets anything out of it, that is the end of any democracy in the entire world, and everything will go to heck in a handbasket. It's the same thing that Anthony Eden said about Nasser in '56 when we kicked Britain, France, and Israel out of Suez. He was a little bit wrong, more than a little bit wrong. So what is your view as to whether or not this really is the turning point, whether democracy survives or not, which is kind of the rallying cry of Joe Biden?
Well, look, I think there are two things that make this all a complete fantasy. One is the idea that this war started as an unprovoked war of Putin invading Ukraine. I just spent, I hope, a useful period to explain it's the opposite of that. There would never have been a war but for us. So how are we saving anything if we cause the war? The whole idea is crazy. We made this war. We made it over a 30-year period, but it accelerated from 2002, 2008, 2014, 2021. We made this. So, no, there's no spillover in that way other than perhaps some sanity. But the second thing that's even worse, and we have grown-ups in this city, grown-ups by physical age, saying literally the reason we need to fight is to show China how strong we are. Oh, Xi Jinping is shaking in his boots from this. Oh, you saw how afraid he was yesterday. This is actually, and by the way, Naftali Bennett, in that explanation when he was describing how he was an informal mediator, and he said we were on the 7th draft and it was about to be signed, and then the U.S. stopped it. He says they stopped it. And he explains, you cannot make this up, ladies and gentlemen. Bennett says, I'm Prime Minister of Israel. I don't get into that. I can't judge. But they thought they had to do it to show China. This is insane. No, really. This is not proving anything to China. It's the opposite. It's just showing weirdness, weakening any capacity the U.S. has in a literal sense of running out of stockpiles, running out of weapons. We don't even have 155 millimeter shells anymore. Now we have another war in the Middle East that we're tending to. The whole idea that we're proving something in Ukraine, well, they should have thought about that before they raised the ante 5 times with the losing hand. That's all I can say.
So, shall we get into the war now in Israel, Palestine? What are your views on that? I asked him what his views are on the current war against Hamas with Israel, and we've moved from being a co-belligerent to a belligerent now without a declaration of war. What do you make about that?
Just in shorthand, I think we should start. We're November 16th, so it's I think 6 weeks ago that Jake Sullivan said the Middle East is the quietest that it's been in 2 decades. And poor Jake, not only did he say it, he wrote it in the November-December issue of Foreign Affairs, which arrived about a week ago. And there it is in bold print. The Middle East is the quietest that it's been in 20 years. And actually, in the text it says, and we've resolved the problems in Gaza. So if ever you want really a vivid demonstration of how they are completely out of touch with reality, it could not have been made more vivid. And if you go back to an enormous amount of evidence, the evidence of the seething discontent in Gaza, AKA the world's largest open-air prison, could have been noted very easily. Everybody knew it. But the idea of the United States was, in the usual way, we make the reality we want. And so we'll make peace between Israel and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and leave the Palestinian issue aside. Another fantasy, by the way, completely. No way that was going to happen, period. No way. But they cannot listen to anybody. This is really a serious problem of American foreign policy, which is you only show your strength by proving that you're deaf. Because if you listen to someone else, that's appeasement, to even hear them. And so this whole thing is, in my view, a terrible blunder. It's very hard to have a 2-state solution right now, but it's the only solution, by the way. Absolutely. I went to Israel my first time in 1972. And so 50 years ago, 51 years ago, and already the famous Alon plan was being implemented, and it was explained to me that we'll put settlers in all the key places in the West Bank, and this will put facts on the ground. And they were so proud, I remember in 1972, about facts on the ground, facts on the ground. I probably heard it 20 times in that trip. Okay, you put facts on the ground long enough, you make such a mess for yourself that you've destroyed any chance of peace. But even so, without going into a long story, we've had innumerable resolutions in the Security Council and the General Assembly, innumerable statements by the Arab League, innumerable statements by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation for a two-state solution, which I favor. I don't, it's harder now. I wish there weren't 600,000 settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Now, the Israelis won't have it. Not this government, so I want to impose it. How can it be imposed? It can be imposed by the UN Security Council, which under Chapter 7 has the authority to keep the global peace and can put sanctions and other measures on for those who violate Security Council. There's only one country standing between a two-state solution and the current disaster, and that's the United States. The only one. Because if you count the votes in the world of the 193 UN member states, it's actually 191 to 2 right now. And even in the United States, what we're discovering, and the politicians are shocked by it, and the university administrators are shocked by it, is the younger generation is not on board with this unqualified, unconditional support of Israel. Quite the contrary. So this country is really divided, and it's divided generationally, and it's divided by other reasons. But Israel has Netanyahu's a disaster from beginning to end. He should have resigned October 7th and taken responsibility for what was a massive security failure. They were warned. The Egyptians tried to warn them. He's a disaster, so he has to go. Maybe some Israelis would say, okay, we accept we have to do something different. I don't know. But to my mind, this has nothing to do with Israel-Palestine negotiations. Because Israel and Palestine have tried to negotiate, or they haven't tried, but they've negotiated for 50 years. And hardliners on both sides have blown it up for 50 years. And now the hardliners are in government in Israel, so it's worse. And every day, the statements that are coming out of the Israeli cabinet are tantamount to intent to genocide, as many people are pointing out, because the vulgarity of it is absolutely shocking. And interestingly, even this administration, where the politicians are trained, you can't show even a glimmer of space with Israel, are saying, okay, we need a Palestinian state. They're saying it because you cannot resist truth in this context, which is so glaring, and the whole world is calling for Israel to stop the carnage. So my own view is that the UN Security Council needs to vote this, and if it's 14-1 with the US vetoing it, the next month it'll be 15-0, because we can't resist being the only one standing in front of even what we say is needed. We signed all those resolutions for a two-state solution. Biden said it again 2 days ago. So I want to impose that as an answer and stop the war. What's interesting is Hamas, Hezbollah, all of it can be demobilized and disarmed in the context of a political settlement. That's the point. There is no reason for a war over this. All this war is about, to refer to von Clausewitz again, is to avoid a Palestinian state. That is not a reason to have a war. So that's my feeling.
So basically, the political reality is that the two that really count, the two countries that really count, Israel and us, in terms of deciding whether this war goes on, there's no political restraint here on Israel, and there's nothing but vengeance in Israel now, and so the
It's-
more
it's
the
not-
more Palestinians Bibi kills, the popular he is. So we have no restraint in either country, which are going to decide how long this goes on. So where does this? We're going to have a salon in December 20th on. We'll have a whole salon on this, but by then. How many? We're over 20,000, 20 to 1 now. We're in a month from now. What are we going to have? 50,000? I mean, there's 7 million Palestinians. How many are they going to kill? I mean, we did this with the American Indians. We said no good Indian is only good dead Indian is a dead Indian, and they're doing this. There seems to be no political restraint.
What Israel is doing is not vengeance, it's politics. They are trying to rule out any political settlement other than domination. That's the policy. And the policy has several different roots to it, but one root of this policy is that there really are people who believe the book of Joshua, period. There really are. Interesting to read the book of Joshua, by the way, because the book of Joshua promises the land from the Euphrates to the Mediterranean. That's a long way, by the way. God help us if anyone tries that. So this is a real problem, and the real solution in the interest of Israel's survival is to impose a stop to this, period. If you like Israel, impose an end to this now, because we're going to have 191 countries completely opposed. And this country is going to be absolutely majority anti-Israel within a month. And already the opinion poll yesterday showed that if asked, do you side with with Israel, or should we be neutral in this? I don't remember exactly the words in yesterday's poll. I think it's Reuters Ipsos poll. Was 32% side with Israel and 41% neutral or neutral mediator, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, so I may have it not quite. But it was a huge shift from just 4 weeks ago. You cannot watch hospitals being bombed, thousands of people being killed, and not have a change of politics of the public. Of course, we don't have any public input to foreign policy, usually. That's what happened in this country. We're completely without any explanation or public input to foreign policy. But the public is enraged, and the campuses, by the way, are really enraged. And now the professors are walking out together with the students. So give another week, another 2 weeks. It's going to change here too. This is dreadful. It's horrible what's happening, and horrible for Israel what's happening. So the faster the solution is imposed on those who cannot do it internally, the faster it's going to be better for them too. That's why I am trying, in every discussion I have in New York with diplomats, to emphasize this point. It's not whether, if you're for Israel, then do it even faster to impose a solution, because what's happening right now is complete destruction of Israel by Netanyahu.
Jeff, why, if the opinion is that intense, because there is standing of any country in the world to sue at the present Israel and the United States for genocide in Gaza. The International Court of Justice said that a nation has standing even if it's not the target of the genocide. There are no lawsuits there.
It's coming. Don't worry. It's
and the
coming.
Second observation, would you agree with Ben Gurion's observation? This is this is decades ago, when he said, if I were Arab, I would never sign a treaty with Israel. We stole their land. We said that God wanted us to have it, but that it's not their God. And so what do you expect? that they are rejecting the idea that we stole their land. That's Ben Gurion's characterization of what the source of the problem was. Do you agree with that?
Well, what Ben Gurion said, which was interesting, was we should settle for this partition. We'll come back later if for more, but take what we can get, be pragmatic, but already part of the idea was, all of this land, at least for some of them, was going to be for Israel. I don't know.
But he characterized it as stealing their land.
Look, I think at this point we had better save the world by enforcing a settlement of two countries right now. And I would recognize Palestine tomorrow. I think the thing that can't work is to say we enter a new negotiation. That's baloney, because we've been 56 years talking about this since the Six-Day War. No more negotiation. Everything that can be said has been said 100 times. There's nothing more to say. What should be done, in my view, tomorrow is the UN Security Council votes the state of Palestine, and the UN General Assembly, by a vote of 191 to 2 maybe, votes the state of Palestine as a UN member state. And it's a UN member state with its capital in East Jerusalem and control over the Islamic holy sites. And if you get that done, there will be peace. And the Arab countries have said repeatedly, we want normal relations with Israel. Since 2002, they've said, just have a Palestinian state and we have normal relations and security for all parties. And that's the yes. And they said it again in Riyadh just a few days ago, exactly the same thing. So this, to my mind, is the right answer.